Evening, everybody. Happy Thursday. Hopefully, everybody has had a good trading week. If you guys have seen on some of our posts on TrendSpider, we're currently doing a bundle package with Cheddar Flow. And so tonight we wanted to really discuss how you can use technical analysis and order flow together to get a better perspective and get an edge in the market. So tonight we're going to be going over a lot of different case studies. We've got a special guest with us, CryptoParadyme, and he's also known as Dime on Twitter. So he's going to go through Cheddar Flow, how he uses it, some different case studies that he's seen over the last couple of weeks, and really just show you guys how you can use technical analysis and order flow together. And then we'll go over a couple more examples with myself. So I'm going to hand it off to you, Mr. Dime, and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this live stream. And can you tell us a little bit about why you use order flow, why it's important, and how you use Cheddar Flow and TrendSpider together?
Sure, absolutely. I like that, Mr. Dime. That's a new one. I'm into
Mr.
it.
Dime. We're gonna stick with it.
So obviously, TrendSpider and Cheddar Flow are doing a little promotion right here together. And obviously, I've been a really big fan of both platforms for a really long time. You guys have seen me all over Twitter. I've been with Cheddar Flow since they launched like 2 years ago now. Cheddar Flow is basically, for those of you that don't trade options, it's a dynamic options flow platform with advanced filtering. Their interface is basically just showing you a slew of different options, large and small order flow. It has its own algorithm and filters that you can customize, and it basically just helps you keep eyes on the market. The point of this is obviously to ride on the coats of institutional traders, or simply to follow the retail herd if they're aping into some days mega pump. Some days the flow on here is absolutely spot on, like it will absolutely print money for you, and some days it's dead wrong. We can't see past every individual news event, but you can't look at Cheddar Flow as just a push button money machine. It does require like a little bit of filtering and thought process on your end. With appropriate filtering and just a little bit of critical thinking with some good TA provided by TrendSpider, we can absolutely find actionable setups using just order flow through the options, and finding really good spots to enter and exit our plays.
Love it. How do you generally start your process? Is it kind of a function of, all right, let's start on Cheddar Flow, find some ideas through power alerts or some other type of flow idea, and then go to TA?
Yeah. So what myself and a lot of my friends that use Cheddar Flow do is we treat this as kind of like an idea generation machine. Like, I don't know if I'm going to trade VRM or Tesla today. I'm simply looking at the flow and seeing what is kind of popping out at me. Like if I saw like these today, the NVAX, I don't know if anyone else saw these today, but I didn't play these personally, but seeing events like this, like, what is going on with NVAX? I would have never looked at NVAX normally, but perhaps there's a setup for me to trade there. Not always, but sometimes. I tend to more stick to the indexes, and ultimately the filtering helps me because this is all noise. If you just looked at the raw flow, whether you're using Cheddar Flow or any other option scanner, you couldn't turn any of this into an actionable trade, most likely, because there's simply so much noise. Some of these people are hedges. Some of these orders, I should say, some of these orders are hedges. Some of these orders are simply people selling premium, and some of them are actual directional bets. So you kind of have to get into some of the extended features, or excuse me, filters. My personal favorite is I like to make sure that it's like 50,000 in premium minimum. You can obviously like do higher, like if you really want to follow only big boys, like 500,000. But I tend to just filter out like the small fish. You can only show like the last hour. Like if you're in the last hour of trading, you only want to see like what's coming in towards the end of the day. But I tend to stick with 50,000 premium. And you can also control like the contract price. Like if you're not spending $2,000 on an option, you can keep it below 500 or below at 25 cents if you're kind of just playing like weekly scalps. But those are just some of the filters. The big filter that is really like my bread and butter is the opening orders. Opening orders tend to be, by definition, volume is eclipsing the open interest. These tend to be more positional bets because they are not someone that is likely selling premium, and it tends to signal that someone was very interested in opening up a long position. So we can take a look. We can see that these came in as a huge block trade. Someone was willing to pay 2,300 per call, and they bought 9.3 million of them. So it was obviously like a reason to go look at that. I didn't take this personally, but basically what I'm doing throughout the trading day is if I see large premium as an opening order, I tend to go look at the chart, see if I can see a setup or see if I see what someone else sees, and I'll make a decision. I'll make a trigger there. What you're seeing here is the filtered flow. And again, the unfiltered flow isn't going to be super useful. But what we really want to take a look at is we're just following big orders or even repeat call flow. I believe you're going to talk about ATVI later tonight. But like ATVI, huge order flow today. We'll go over that later. These also very cool feature that Cheddar Flow provides is the repeat option flow. You'll see it for ATVI here, but you also see it for NVAX. Let's do MasterCard. MasterCard had this massive order flow today. We probably can see it over in the power alerts. Probably not here. All right. In any event, the point of these is simply to filter all of this information. You can take the filters further. Like if you only trade SPY and QQQ or indexes in general, you can filter it down to that. It's whatever you want to do, whatever you want to trade. If you're a short-term trader and you only want to trade weeklies, well, then let's look at the weeklies. If you're a longer-term trader and you kind of want to like look further out, you can look for an expiration that's 5 months out and try to find fundamental long swings or short swings if you're a bear. There's really like no limit to what you can do with the filters on Cheddar Flow, but that's really only scratching the surface of what you can do with this. They've recently added dark pool data, which has been incredibly useful to me. Let me turn off these filters here, and I'll show you an example I used today. Some of you guys saw me tweeting about Coin earlier today. Coin was doing we'll talk about this when we get into the charts later. Coin was doing a bullish retest, and I saw a $50 million dark pool print combined with this option order flow, and I actually got long today after already being in it for a minute. The dark pools can really show you. You have to learn how to read them a little bit. If you see a dark pool during a pump, it tends to mean someone's exiting. If you see it when things are going down, it tends to mean quite the opposite.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. And then, of course, Cheddar Flow is has these. Cheddar Flow has been experimenting with these power alerts for a while now, but they've really, really upgraded them lately. It used to just be kind of like it would show the ticker, it would show the strength of the flow that it's seeing today, and that was it. But they recently added some upgrades that are really, really cool. The power alerts are basically what for that day is showing up with big strength. They have their own algorithm that determines how strong the particular flow is. But basically, let's say you wanted to trade CLF. Oh, this is perfect. So the new features they added was basically this whole screen. It'll show you where on the today's chart it's signaled. Obviously, this panned out very well if you took these. These were large premium orders. You can actually go and show orders. Lots of premium today. People were obviously itching to get long on this. We can see that it's been very popular the last few days down here in the corner. And we can see that it was, according to Cheddar Flow's own algo, higher on the strength, showing that people were obviously very interested in doing this. Now, these tend to be shorter term trades for the most part. Like if there's a news pump, they will absolutely go off. But if there's sometimes some longer fundamental swings here, and you can obviously look at the raw flow and figure out what you want to do. This one on Snow obviously worked out well. You could do a little bit of TA here, bounce, bounce, bounce. There you go. But it obviously has been incredibly useful. And if you're got any questions for me? Like, am I moving too fast? I want to make sure you're on the same page with me, Jay.
So it looks like I'm just every time I look down, I'm looking at the chat. Somebody, I'm not sure if we're going to take too many requests, but we haven't had any. Do you mind checking out Tesla?
Absolutely.
Just kind of what's gone through over this week.
Wow, that's a lot of premium. So let's say if I was interested in trading Tesla, Tesla is one of those ones where you can't really use the opening order filter as much because there's so many people trading it. There's pretty much always volume on it. Obviously, there's a huge bear here. As soon as you turn on the opening order filter, all of the other flow disappears. But you can absolutely see that some people are absolutely bullish, and these are assuming these aren't sells, but they are buys. Let's see if we can find out above ask. So when it comes in above ask, that does usually mean that someone is itching to get very long. These are obviously some very high end options here. What is that? That would be like 10,000, right? If it's 107 for the particular contract, someone is betting that Tesla is about to break out here, and it may very well do so. This is obviously a very good day for Tesla in terms of premium option flow. We don't usually see this much. Fun other feature, you can actually go to flow overview and see relatively who is getting the volume. And we can see Tesla today was number 2 with premium with 21.8 million. This is another great screen from Cheddar Flow. You can see the bearish flow, which sectors are seeing the most calls most contracts traded, and you can of course see just in terms of premium and orders who's the most popular. Obviously Apple and Tesla were dominating things today.
Interesting. So as far as like, opening orders go, you mentioned that, sometimes you can't look at that. Is that just because someone may be selling calls and you can't really tell? Can you tell through, if it's an above ask order or anything like that? Or how do you kind of filter through some of those, like, is this directional? Is it a hedge? Or is there really no way for you to be able to tell?
So there are some limited ways. The problem with like Apple and Tesla is that every single strike, every single contract, for the most part, is already going to have open interest on it, and it's probably going to have a lot of open interest. And the opening orders filter is dependent on volume eclipsing the open interest. So like if you're looking at Apple, you can see like a lot of these already have like 200,000 open interest, 30,000, 100,000. Like it's hard to get an opening order through on Apple. They do come through once in a while. See these giant puts. Well, not too giant. It's hard to absolutely know if it's an opening, meaning like someone is actually taking a position, or if it's someone hedging or selling premium. That's where you kind of have to go into the flow, or sorry, the TA of it, and be like, am I FOMOing into a pump at resistance? Is someone selling this call to me? Is there a reason that Apple's going to go up? Like you can't just blindly ape into everything that you see on Cheddar Flow, because that's what I did when I got started, and I nuked my account back when I was learning how to trade. You can't do that. You have to apply some critical thinking. You have to figure out, is this a good place to enter? Do I have an invalidation? And will this move in the direction that I think it's going to move?
Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people, I think there's this fallacy that like, oh, if an order comes in, that's someone buying. But, a lot of people don't realize, well, you have to buy it from somebody. Somebody's selling that to them, or the opposite. So, I just think for those that are using the tool and the platform on the flow side of things, you just always have, and even using volume, raindrops, volume by price on TrendSpider, there's always a buyer for a seller. There's always a seller for a buyer. So there's never going to be a one directional move. There's always two people in the transaction, two parties, if you will. So just wanted to point that out, because, a lot of people will say, oh, well, a ton of flow came in today. Well, what if that's somebody selling covered calls on their, massive position, or, whatever the case is. So I'm glad that you brought up that this could easily be a hedge too on a lot of these things. So it does take some digging and some technical analysis, and that's where the technical analysis comes in, to kind of see if there's confluence between, support, volume shelf, whatever the case is, anchored VWAP, and then kind of putting that whole picture together using both tools.
100%. And even if you're not someone that like trades options, but you actually are an option seller, you could absolutely use Cheddar Flow and figure out where the liquidity is for the day, like who's paying a lot for your particular options. Like let's say you own 5 stocks that you sell covered calls on. You can have a watch list for just your particular holdings, And anytime you see high liquidity events occurring for like SPY or SPCE, you can get on that. You can click right here. You can see what the flow. Let's find something else with a little bit more flow. QQQ. Let's do QQQ. Let's say that you see a bunch of people buying these puts and you see that there's just a bunch of liquidity there. People are actively betting on the market falling. Well, maybe you want to sell some puts to these guys as long as the getting is good and as long as there's volume there. You can absolutely follow that. It obviously can be profitable for you if you're selling on the premium side, or if you see someone buying NVIDIA calls that are like outside of where you think NVIDIA is going to go. You can obviously capitalize on that. People don't realize that the premium sellers can make money from people FOMOing, and a lot of people can absolutely just be like, oh my god, lots of NVIDIA calls, I'm gonna spend $500 on these calls and make money. And that's not always the case, but the people who are selling the calls always make money. That's how it works.
The old casino. So when you're looking at flow, what's your threshold? Yeah, I think you said 500K. Did you mean?
It depends if I'm in a scalping mood. Like if I'm scalping SPY, like I'm much more loose with things. I tend to look for the larger swing orders, at least 50K. But if I see something, basically I do 50K because I don't want to see the 30K, the 20K, the 15Ks. Those come up once in a while, and I just don't want to see that. I tend to also look over a contract price of $1 just because I'm not really a fan of playing things that are under $1. They tend to not be that I just haven't had a good time.
Spreads are usually huge.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say under $1, the spreads are usually pretty big too.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Like I would have like maybe looked at this gold call today. I didn't look at my flow today at all. I was managing some other trades, but gold obviously was near an important swing low that I observed, and maybe this would have been something, but it's an opening order, high premium, and it's just a huge order. We also saw on the flip side, we saw MU today. I don't have the chart up, but MU was at a major support, and we saw bearish euphoria coming through the tape hardcore. Even if you turn off all the filters, come on, reset. If you turn off all the filters, you can see that bears were incredibly euphoric. And what I mean by bearish euphoria is I've seen this on SPY, I've seen this on various tickers. When you suddenly see like huge puts coming in at support, usually means the bears are getting carried away. Not always, but sometimes. And it can mean that it's time to trade counter trend, especially if something is at a big important support.
Or
that's ultimately up to you and your TA.
Selling puts, right?
These could be people selling puts. You're absolutely correct. I don't believe they came in above ask, so I'm leaning not into it, but absolutely someone could be selling these puts. Some of these were absolutely also in the money. So selling in the money puts is kind of begging to get exercised. Not always a good thing that you want.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Sometimes if someone's got a ton of shares they want to, take advantage of exercising, but yeah, I've heard a couple stories where someone's like, yeah, I got assigned shares, and it's like, ooh, that sucks. But yeah, I just want, for those that aren't familiar with options trading, right? There's a couple different ways you can make money trading options. I'm not going to get too in depth in it, but you can trade the premium, meaning that you buy a call at $1 and you sell it for $2. But I think there's a fallacy, in the market that, my position, if I buy $100 calls, I have to be over the spot price has to be over $100 in order to be profitable. That's only the case if, let's say that you have $100 call and and the price goes to 110, and at the expiration day, you have the right to buy that stock at $100 and then immediately sell it at the market price of 110. So that's the kind of way a lot of people don't realize that's how options actually work. A lot of people don't realize buying and selling premium, you're just essentially selling an insurance premium, and premiums go up because the probability of an option being in the money or out of the money goes up or down. And that's what moves premiums, and that's mostly why people are trading options, simply for that. It's just kind of leverage with less capital.
Yeah, if I had to learn options trading all over again, I would absolutely suggest that people learn about selling options first, because it makes you understand and appreciate like who are you buying this from? Why are they selling it to me? Like, what's the risk to me here? I was talking to someone today that found me through Cheddar Flow, and he actually had no idea what theta was. And he showed me about 5 different positions that he's in, all weekly options, and they're all completely decayed, like expiring
Oh man.
tomorrow. I felt so bad for him. He's probably watching. Nothing personal against you, buddy, but you gotta manage your theta, and people just don't understand that these options degrade over time. Cheddar Flow, obviously, part of the ability, or part of the excellent part of it is you can filter out for longer expirations. Like, I'm not really a fan of trading weekly options, simply because if I hold it overnight, it's decayed. And I'm not a fan of that. I'd rather pay for 3 or 4 weeks of premium. And not
Is
everyone
there
gets
any
that.
is there any Greek filters? Like, can you filter for high implied volatility types of
You can
selling or
implied
buying? Or
volatility greater than 50. I've asked for a
oh,
delta filter. Is there one? I can't remember if he added it yet. I've asked for it. I know it's on the to-do list. Uh, Pre-earnings.
I would
Yeah,
just
no, I don't
mention
see that yet.
to anybody wanting to trade options, one, I would definitely recommend, paper trading them. I'm not a big fan of paper trading. Like, if you're trading common stock, it is what it is, but you can lose a lot of money real quick. I mean, I blew up at least one or two or maybe three options accounts because I was in this mode of like, well, we'll learn as we go. And you can't really do that with options because you'll learn real quick that you could literally lose everything in a week if you're trading the wrong premium or the expiration, or that's what I mean, the expiration, not the premium. The premium is part of the contract. But yeah, I mean, and learning the Greeks. A lot of people will, you see a lot of people buying, let's say Wish. I think somebody said that they had 400% implied volatility. If you're buying something with 400% implied volatility, you're essentially just giving your money away. I mean, the implied volatility from my experience, anything over 100 implied volatility, unless it's just a really, really volatile stock, that's for people selling options because there's such a move already priced in that they're selling that to you because there's such a move priced in. If the move doesn't happen, implied volatility crush, IV crush comes into play pretty quick. So the fact that they do have the IV filter over, you said 50, or is it just over any threshold that you pick?
IV filter greater than 50. I would like to see Cheddar Flow. First of all, Cheddar Flow is very good about adding things if it's a really good idea. It just takes time to add everything. I'm hoping someday they add a delta filter. I don't see it here. I know that it's on their list. It's on their to-do list. The filters they're always adding stuff. Like the repeat call activity was just added. But to go back to what you were just talking about in regards to the premium, we saw Robinhood stock pump like last week, and I actually sold a call on it. $75 strike when it was at 72. Someone gave me $1,300 for that call. Wow. And it went 95% minus 95% down. So that was
wait. So, you sold a $1,300 contract at a 72 spot price?
No, it was 75. The strike price was strike price is 75, expiring August 20th. This is the day that everything was that hood was just going up, 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 huge volatility.
Hood.
And
got it.
And I sold that, and pretty much 100% of that was mine.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, it works on the other end. It's just a matter of like starting to learn when FOMO is taking hold versus when it's time to get long, and getting long into like a 70% pump isn't a wise move.
But it's going to go higher. As far as kind of tying in the flow side with the technicals, I know you have a couple case studies, maybe looking at the flow and then technicals. What's one that's been a really interesting case study, or maybe one that you're still watching, kind of using the flow and then being able to go on TrendSpider? And what are you looking at on TrendSpider to see if the thesis is in line? Let's say that you have a huge order that comes in on the call side. and then you're like, okay, this is interesting. Let me check out the chart. What are you pulling up on the chart to see if that's agreeing with maybe a technical thesis you have?
That's an excellent pivot. Let's go right over to TrendSpider. So I've got a couple different examples that we can work with here. Snow has been one of the more consistent ones. I've been watching it for a while, and as most of us know, it's just been downtrend, downtrend. It kind of printed like some kind of weird inverse head and shoulders, kind of funky. I wouldn't formally call this one, but we did start to see something important. We saw a loss of support, capitulation, volume coming in here, and let's see, am I anchored? Yep, I'm anchored correctly. So I love the anchored volume by price to the for the year. So I like to see the volume profile for the current year. Very useful. We saw that the market structure started to change here. We started to put higher lows, higher lows, higher lows. Then we flipped the anchored VWAP from the top. We also flipped the anchored VWAP from listing. And right about here on July 27th, 28th, no, the 26th, right? Maybe here. I saw some very large orders coming in for Snow 270 calls for 921. And obviously those are in the money at this point. The people, anyone that bought those from Cheddar Flow, very happy. There was millions in flow. They were opening orders and they were coming in on a very important flip of the VWAP. Now we obviously ranged for a few days here, but the resolution so far seems to be up, and we're almost, if we get past this at 300, we're in clear skies from a volume perspective. We're already still flipping levels, and as long as we continue to flip more, we can keep going up. There's obviously some really nice price levels here. And until I see like either some dark pool flow showing that people might be selling or some large puts coming in, I have no reason to close this position. Hopefully it just keeps running up into earnings. I may end up closing it right before earnings, but obviously that's up to each individual person. The change in market structure was the huge trigger here.
I have a question, and this is kind of interesting. And I've thought about this a lot and curious what your thoughts are. Do you think a lot of these big orders coming in are like, let's say, you know, the 270 calls on Snowflake? Do you think that's somebody front running their own order, meaning they know they're about to buy millions and millions of dollars in common stock and they know that they're going to move the market, so they just go in and buy calls because they know that they're essentially about to make the market higher?
I'm sure that's part of it, but you have to also remember that there's huge hedge funds and other people that simply don't trade with options. There's plenty of people buying these stocks. There's index funds that are adding it to their portfolios. And then there's just people who don't know anything about options. And it's like, oh, I like Snow, I'm going to bid it up today. I'm sure that there's obviously, and we know this from option flow, there are obviously people front running news, front running pumps, but a lot of it comes down to the technical analysis. I mean, like I was just saying a second ago, all of this over here from December to May, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. It was the change in the market structure and getting over these important levels that triggered the move. It probably would have happened regardless of not if that person bought their options or even bought their spot holdings. It's just simply a matter of aligning your hallucination of the market with other participants.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, I just was always curious. I'm like, if somebody's about to like throw 50 million in common stock at something and they want to offset that they're going to be bidding up the price, do they just buy the calls and then they just essentially make money on the calls while they're bidding up the price to try to get in? But yeah, it's always interesting with options and kind of trying to see what's really going on there. But as far as Snow goes, I mean, was there any flow that came in? I think I heard somebody talking about flow, or maybe saying that options were cheap on Snow, even up in the 320s.
Snow options are actually pretty expensive. I think I paid 900 per call for these. I sometimes play high premium calls just because they tend to print. But only if I agree with the setup and what's going on. Also, some stocks just have higher implied volatility, and it's inevitable. But Snow, most of these calls were at least over 500, and I'm pretty sure I saw at least 2 or 3 million on the day that I got long. Coming into Snow is on 726, according to my notes here, and the calls were 270, 921. And like I said, obviously these are now in the money and they're printing quite well. But anyone that basically followed that flow on the flip of the anchored VWAP and filling this volume gap obviously is in good profit at this point.
Makes sense to me. I didn't realize the options were so expensive. Yeah, I
Some
was
of
actually
Snow's
looking
options
at
are very expensive unless you get out of the
how do
money.
you calculate, like a target for your options? So for example, like let's say that you buy the $900 contracts. Are you looking, so I guess I'll just say how I look at it. So for example, like if I'm buying a call, for example, Disney, I got into Disney today. I was looking at the one, I went to September 17th and I was looking at the options. And the way that I kind of came up with a profit target for the options was actually by going to the 917 calls that were in the money. So I'm going and looking on the chain and saying, okay, well on 917, let's assume that Disney hits tomorrow on the 190 calls. What are the 180 calls trading for 917? Because then I can get an idea of, all right, well, if these go in the money tomorrow, then these are probably going to be at least close to that. Now you have to take into account implied volatility is going to change with that. But how do you kind of look at a price target on options? Because obviously, spot price and common and options are not the same. You can't say, oh, I've got a price target of $85 on ATVI, for example. But how do you translate that into your option? Do you set the target on the common stock, or do you set the target on the option?
That's a pretty good question. There's a few things. So first of all, I like to get my initial investment out. Like if I'm up 100%, like I'll take a few things off, and as we move up, I'll tend to skim some off of my position. Another thing that I look for is I check the volume, especially if I have a very large position. If I will check the volume on my particular contracts, and if I see that the open interest has declined, or if I see that there's huge volume on it today, for an in the money strike, I'm going to assume that's probably not someone that's buying the in the money call at that level. It also is like a matter of where it is on the chart. Like if I think that Snow is going to keep going, then I'm going to probably stay in. But if I see it starting to sweep these highs, like here and here, like I'm probably going to take some profits here because I know other participants are probably going to take their profits there. But as long as the market structure isn't compromised, and if you have like a low order down here, down here, or down here, there's really no reason for you to panic. If you see a structure break, like if Snow nuked tomorrow down to here, that's a loss of support. That's a good reason to get out. You're still in profit. You can get out and take your profits. But I try to like really scale out as the price moves up into potential targets. I do like to get my initial investment out as soon as I can, though, just so I can play with house money. It depends on what asset I'm trading, but generally I like to do that.
Makes sense. And do you have different rules for different stocks? Meaning like, let's say that you buy something with implied volatility 100, and obviously implied volatility changes per stock you're looking at, but are there like hard rules like I won't touch anything over 150 implied volatility? Or do you look and say, okay, well, this thing generally has 150 IV, I can't really get below it, I'll just take the trade anyways?
I don't have too many rules in regards to like which options I do or don't play. If something is absolutely rocketing upwards nonstop, I'm not going to touch that. One of my biggest rules that I have, generally speaking, is I buy red candles. First of all, the premium the premium crush. If you're right on your entry and it reflates the next day, you obviously get an instant extra 10% on your gains just because of the premium. I don't really pay attention to implied volatility other than the actual stock itself. Like I'm not going to buy a 70% pump or a 20% pump. I will wait for a red day, or I'll wait for some other reason to get long.
Got it. Makes sense to me. So Snow was a really good example. Anything other that you were looking at, or anything that you're currently looking at that kind of looks interesting on the flow and chart side?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got multiple examples for us to look at today. FCX has always been a favorite of mine. It just trends very well when it's actually time. It's been ranging for a minute, but last year, ever since 2020, it's been straight up. So right around here, right after earnings, we saw, what do my notes say? FCX, January 22, 40 strikes. On the breakout here, we had reclaimed the yearly VWAP. As a reminder, we are anchored year to date to this volume profile. And honestly, it had been looking bad down here. It was below all historical volume levels for the year. It did not look good. Obviously, earnings changed that. And now, right about here, we signaled that it was time to get long. And we had a nice bounce up to this other trend line, come back down to the yearly VWAP, and we're up and breaking out again. We're above all of the major volume shelves now. This volume gap is empty, and probably the next target here is going to be 41 or so. Obviously, I think that this is probably going to swing up back to the highs at some point, but a nice interim target is 41. And I believe there was a few $1 million worth of this option flow on these far out leaps. I really love long-term leaps because if you're right, the premium cranks really hard because there's so much time premium left if you're in the money the day after you buy them. I'm a big fan of them. But just this absolute structure change, you could even call this an inverted head and shoulders. I mean, this looks like it's just going to go straight up right here.
Ooh, oh, that's beautiful. That's like one of the more textbook inverse head and shoulders I've seen in a while.
Yep. And then the breakout right here is obviously gorgeous. And if we go over to the raindrop candles, I haven't actually checked this, but we can probably see, yeah, absolutely some good volume into close 3 days in a row, 5 days in a row. So
well, and you had a red candle today, right? But you have a green raindrop, which is always something I'll kind of look at.
Top heavy.
I think. I don't know, maybe I saw that wrong, but I think the candle's red and then you've got a green raindrop. It's kind of divergence that I use quite a bit.
I like that as well.
Just because it can tell you some interesting stuff.
All right, and I got another example unless you have some other questions on this particular setup. These next two ones are bangers. They are absolute bangers.
Well, I guess FCX also has a gap. I mean, FCX is a money chart and the flow. So
yeah, there's a nice gap here. This one's already been filled, but this gap here is begging to get filled, and it happens to oh no, it's a little above the volume shelf, but this could easily get filled up here.
Yeah, I mean that neckline is about as perfect as it gets. I mean,
yep.
A lot of the time you got like a weird kind of like, did this person break their shoulder or something neckline type of thing? But that's about as perfectly horizontal as you're going to get.
By the way, while I have you on here, I need something to draw a curve for these inverse head and shoulders. I haven't been able to find one yet, but I'll ask you about that later.
No. Let's do it now because I guarantee there's other people wanting the same thing. All right. So quick feature
request
showing here. So all you need to do is go to the polyline tool so that
oh, this thing down here?
Yep.
Oh, I can just do that. Oh, I see. Oh, double click. Cool. I didn't know I could do that.
And then double click on it.
No way. You can turn this into a curve.
Yeah, go to smooth next to arrow.
Oh my God. Really? Yeah. I didn't know this was here the whole time. That's really cool.
Hey, now we got squiggly lines. So yeah,
I'll play with that later.
If you want to make an inverse head and shoulders, click for the inverse head and shoulders, and then it will just keep being continuous. So just press enter and that will end your drawing. Cool. So yeah, I love that feature because you can just make nice and smooth setups and curved bottoms and all that kind of thing.
Cool. Thank you for showing me that. I'm going to jump to my next example because I think you're going to really like this one. This one was absolute fire.
All right, let's do it.
So this is AA. Shout out to Melon Trades for putting this on my radar. It came up on Flow and he was tweeting about it and I took a look at it and I was absolutely in love with it. I'm going to zoom out to the weekly for a second here. Let's turn off the earnings. So this was obviously a gorgeous double tap of the VWAP, flip the volume shelf, breakout, absolutely gorgeous. There was 726. On 726, we saw $40 calls come in for 917 expiration. Going back to the daily for a second here. Again, obviously, double tap of the VWAP, very nice. Breakout and flip this huge volume shelf here, and it went straight up. Absolutely gorgeous. And if we go over to the raindrop candles, I believe this was kind of two balloon breakouts into the close for these 2 days. and obviously it kept going. Excellent trade, and the flow backed it up 100%. I just happened to have one of my friends talking about it this day and took that trade from him. So thank you to him.
What a rip.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe they're in aluminum. But
Yep.
obviously, little shill over here for TrendSpider. All of the analysts have been bullish on this all summer, so it's good to finally see like the analyst ratings like yielding for everybody that was involved with the stock.
Hey, good to know that they know what they're talking about for once. Some of
Yeah,
these analysts are absolute idiots. I don't really know
definitely
I don't know a
agree.
nicer way to put it. Yeah, if anyone's interested, go on Tesla and start looking at Citigroup and how they've done over the last few years. Citigroup analyst estimates may be the most bullish signal out there. So if you're on TrendSpider, check that out. It's pretty funny
Good to know.
how bad they are.
All right. Well, we can go to the last example if that's cool with you, unless you have anything else for me on this one.
Yeah, it works for me.
Cool. So coin, everyone loves coin because Coinbase, Bitcoin, everyone loves the implied volatility of these amazing proxies for crypto action. As most of us know, they had earnings this week, and it was pretty much a blowout. But they still fell after after the actual earnings. They had an initial pump, and that was fun. But if anyone that follows me on Twitter has been following me rather on this trade, I started getting long over here, and I've been selling premium on each of these rips up to this very nice. It's easier to see on the candles. This has been a very clear resistance. I would sell calls like up here, and I started almost getting exercise here. But once we got to earnings week, or I think it was the week before earnings week, right here, we had this very nice, where is it? Raindrops. And hang on, one more thing. We have to switch to manual for this one. It's not a year old yet. So first candle, this volume profile is anchored to the listing candle. Now this chart makes more sense. So obviously Coinbase was ranging, getting bid up at the 214 level every single time. This was obviously a floor being created. And once we got the balloon breakout into close, it was game on. And we had all kinds of order flow for coin coming in that day, anywhere from like 240 to 300. Everyone was bullish on it. And as soon as it had that breakout, it just started going up into earnings. And I closed all of my positions here at the listing anchored VWAP. And I actually rebought everything down here because this is now a potential SR flip. Combined with what I showed you guys earlier, we had a $50 million dark pool order, and they're probably not selling into a dump. So they're probably buying the obvious support resistance flip. But obviously the balloon breakout into the earnings week was huge, reclaiming and respecting the POC and just going up. It was fabulous. It was a textbook play. Loved it.
For those not familiar with POC, that just stands for the point of control, which is pretty much your biggest volume node on the volume by price.
Correct. And that's since listing. So this is for all time history of Coinbase's being listed on the markets. Coin tends to be a very popular option on Cheddar Flow when it's coming through. Just to go back to Cheddar Flow for a second. Let's take a look at coin today. Coin, obviously, huge amount, not huge, not as large as it was last week, but a $500,000 order, 50 million dark pool. That was a reason enough for me to get long, and I did. And I'm going to be managing and selling premium on it as time progresses. But I'm just in spot shares for now, just going to see how this rides out. I'm hoping that it just kind of, hoping that it just kind of does this. We'll see if Bitcoin cooperates. It's really up to Bitcoin at this point.
Come on, Bitcoin, you can do it. Old Bitcoin, yeah, it's had quite the run. And it's interesting because once again, Bitcoin's high was almost right in line with Coinbase's earnings. And for those that follow Bitcoin and Coinbase together, their IPO was literally the high for Bitcoin in April. So interesting to see how those two trade together for sure.
It was absolutely the Pico top. It was the the greatest market scam precision I've ever seen in my life. It was amazing.
So there's a question on the chat real quick.
Yeah, sure.
It says, how does the volume shelf work? Is it a live representation of current orders? And just to quickly answer it, it's just an aggregation of shares where shares are that have been transacted, where shares are being distributed. So the anchor part comes from where you're starting it. In this case, Dime is using the IPO candle for the anchor, because we want to see, since the start of this trading publicly, where are majority of the shares holding, where have they been transacted? And so that shelf is generally a function of the point of control, which is your biggest volume node, and then you have quite a few other volume nodes around it. I have a couple examples. I have one on ATVI and Disney we can go over shortly to explain a little more. But Dime, anything else that you want to add to kind of this volume shelf, or how you use it, or anything like that?
Volume shelf is like the biggest thing I used on TrendSpider. That no one else has anything that even comes close to this. It's my favorite, my absolute favorite.
Nice. I love it. It's and a lot of people ask, well, how do we know if that's buying volume or selling volume? And it's kind of what we talked about before on the options. There's always a buyer for a seller. I don't care if it was buying volume or selling volume. I personally don't even believe in buying volume or selling volume. It's just where volume is aggregating and where conviction is by the demand side of the equation. And that's where you get raindrops. That's where you get the bulges on top of the raindrop. For every buyer, there's a seller. So it's where do those buyers have conviction and willing to absorb that supply on the market is what really matters. And so volume by price really can help you visualize that and see that. If you guys want to learn more, just go to the TrendSpider Technical Analysis series on YouTube, type in volume shelf TrendSpider TA series, and that should give you a pretty good intro to how to use these different levels and that type of thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Dime, but that was a question.
Fine. Oh, it's fine. No, I was just gonna say, check out this very nice volume shelf that poked out on Disney today. I'm not gonna steal your thunder because I know that was your baby today, but I just pulled it up, and that volume shelf on the point of control. This is anchored to the year to date, and bam. Obviously, that's extended hours. We'll see what happens tomorrow, but even before this region was starting to see very heavy volume in general. And it was obviously something was going to happen from here, especially once we broke out of that structured wedge, attempted to break the yearly VWAP, and now we did pretty decisively. And we can see this gap in volume right here was obviously begging to be filled, and it got filled.
Jumped right over it.
Yep, no kidding.
But yeah, no, definitely. Disney's just one that it can literally do nothing for 6 months, and then finally, generally need some type of catalyst. So anytime Disney Plus is in the news, especially in earnings, that's always a catalyst. People just like go ape mode on Disney when Disney Plus numbers come out.
This is their best quarter since The Mandalorian ended, I'm pretty sure.
Beautiful. Give me 195 tomorrow and I'll be a happy camper. So we'll see. All right, any other examples? I think we've got about 10 minutes left. We can very much keep it on your screen. I have a couple examples that I was looking at this week that we can look at, but if you've got any others, we can touch on those too.
I don't have any offhandedly, but if chat wants us to look at something, I'm happy to look at something. I can go over DIS, I can go over ATVI, we can look at the indexes, Square, NVIDIA, Amazon. I mean, I'll look at pretty much anything that people want me to look at. If you have some ideas, I'll work with it.
Don't bet against the mouse. ATVI is the main one. If I can share my screen real quick, I just want to quickly go over ATVI and I'll hand it back over to you for the last. I'm really only going to go over this for a couple minutes and then I'll hand it back off to you to finish it off. If you guys do have any requests, throw them in the chat. We'll quickly go over this ATVI case study and then we'll hand it back over to Dime to finish it off. So if you guys do have any, we got a couple coming in. So I'll switch over to my screen.
Do I need to stop my share on my end?
Nope. We're all good. Cool. Should be good to go. I think everybody should be able to see my screen now. So if you guys can see my screen, which you should be able to, we have a weekly chart on ATVI here. A couple things that were very interesting on ATVI last week. ATVI is one that I always keep on my watch list. It's one that's done really well for me, just because it's got really good moves when it moves. And so another thing, the implied volatility isn't that high on this. That's what I like, because when those big moves come in, the implied volatility spikes. And if there's not a lot of implied volatility before that spike, you're just banking on the premium from that IV spike. So one thing I thought was interesting on ATVI, the COVID low anchored VWAP is something that I still use because it's still relevant on a lot of charts, not all of them, but you can see here that I'm measuring the volume weighted average price and the volume by price since the COVID bottom. And what you'll see is, notice here that the price pulled back quite a bit from those highs that we saw in July of 2020. And we pulled back right to this anchored VWAP. So this is actually a trade that I took back in 2020. I think I bought like the $85 calls or something when we were around 78 or so. And I sold them a little early, but I also wasn't expecting ATVI to go up to literally like 90 within 3 weeks. But that's neither here nor there. Just wanted to go over the thesis because we are once again, last week, we bounced right off of this anchor VWAP. On top of that, we have this volume shelf, which we mentioned is just a lot of volume nodes showing that there's a lot of shares holding there. So anytime you have a confluence between the anchored VWAP and the volume shelf and this type of candle where you have this huge wick, that is worth noting. And so on top of that, if you turn on the weekly raindrop chart, we also had a blue raindrop last week. So anytime you have a blue raindrop on a volume shelf, anchored VWAP, if you have it together, that is definitely something to keep in mind. A lot of the time, blue raindrops just simply mean, whenever you see a blue raindrop, it just means the volume weighted average price for the first and the second half of the day or the week, whatever you're looking at, are equal. So it's essentially a volume weighted doji. So the fact that we had a blue raindrop on the volume shelf at the COVID low anchored VWAP, that was the technical thesis I had. On top of that, you have this volume gap above, meaning you don't have a lot of liquidity above. You don't have a lot of people holding at a loss. You don't have a lot of people breaking even on ATVI from buying into early around 90 to 92 until you get back up to this break-even supply zone above. So not a lot of liquidity above. These volume gaps, as Dime mentioned, can really act as an area for price to move very quickly. And then it was interesting because I went over to Cheddar Flow and I just looked at ATVI on the historical flow, and I was just looking at it pretty much since the start of August. That was kind of when we bottomed last week. And you'll see here that the bullish flow was, let me turn on ATVI here. The bullish flow sentiment was almost 100%. So you can see here the put to call was 0.12. That means that pretty much 88% of the flow was on the call side. And so what I did was I looked back and I could see that these big sweeps were coming in right around this spot price of around 78 to 79. So someone was definitely buying up options contracts and probably shares too. But you can see 545K, 184K, 157K. I don't really look at the 28 to 33K unless that was just a huge order and it got chopped up because they were filling larger orders. So the call flow is also there. And this may be one to even keep an eye on into the next couple weeks. Look at the flow that came in today. $1.4 million in premium for the $90 calls expiring in January of 2022. That screams like very, very high conviction for me. So just keep, and the fact that it's so far out makes me think that's probably a directional bet. If it was like next week's calls for $90, I'd probably think maybe they're just like selling premium into this pump. But the fact that you do have a lot of premium coming in, the flow sentiment is so high, that is something you want to really look at when you're looking at the technical side of things. Holy crap, that white screen is bright. All right, well, you can see my face again. So yeah, that's how you can really use the technicals, the anchor VWAP and volume by price. That was just another case study. Dime pretty much really went over that as well. He's a huge volume profile and anchored VWAP guy. So I just wanted to point out ATVI because I did mention that I would go over that example, but Dime, let's hand it back off to you. I'm going to look at the chat real quick. We've got 5 minutes to go over a couple requests. Let me see if we have anything that MU seems to be one that people are asking about multiple times.
Absolutely.
Can we look at MU?
Yeah, absolutely. Before we do that, just very quickly, I don't know if you know about this nice little feature over here, but if you ever want to like take a look at the 7-day flow for what's coming in, particularly with ATVI or any other ticker, very useful for seeing what people have been doing for like the last week. You can also see, of course, on the right-hand side, the dark pools, but I know time's a factor, so let's go take a look at MU. Just to quickly take a look at the flow, we did earlier already, but obviously MU had a very bad day today. And we can see here that people are getting omega short here. And if you were just looking at the flow, you would be like, oh, that's very scary. Why would I want to buy this? Well, that's where you have to go and do TA. I have not looked at MU on TrendSpider today, so don't put too much weight on what I'm doing here. The basic thing that I'm going to obviously look at is this very nice support test. Now, obviously, this is not ideal. We are below all of the major volume for the year. There's not really much volume showing up to support this. It's not a great look. Maybe the bears are right, but this is a support, and this is potentially somewhere that you'd want to try to bid, at least maybe up to the $83 range, back up into the point of control. This is support until it's proven otherwise. Now, obviously, we're only looking at the yearly volume profile, but let's say we wanted to like go a little bit further, like to the COVID bottom. Really nice trick, by the way, for volume by price. Highly emotional charge days are the best anchors for volume profile, because like the Corona crash in this case, because there's so much volume since then, and it just gives you a very clear idea. And we can see, even if you just anchored a VWAP from here, can I do that? Is it going to let me? There we go. Even if we just anchor a VWAP from here, if it falls and hits the anchored VWAP from the COVID low, that would probably be a great long. The only thing that's really concerning is the complete lack of volume in this area, and then this huge volume gap. That's obviously not great. Obviously, AMD and NVIDIA have been having a really good run. Maybe it's time for the semiconductors to cool off. I don't know. But this is support until proven otherwise.
Hey, I still like NVIDIA. Yeah, it's hard to say. It's crazy that MU got so destroyed. And then, it was even a laggard. I thought MU may be kind of a laggard to catch up, and it's done nothing but go the opposite way of AMD and NVIDIA.
Yeah, and again, looking at this from a market structure perspective, let's say you're back here in July or August 2020, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher low, distribution where it's going sideways here, and obviously people are starting to exit, lower high, lower high, lower high, lower high. So you may absolutely get a bounce out of it, but for all you know, it's just going to bounce to like here and fill the gap. It is a risky long here, but at the same time, the sheer confidence of these bears is a little overwhelming. They may very well be wrong. Some of the best trades that I've ever taken have been counter trading like $20 million puts that have come through the tape, or possibly someone's selling 20 million in puts.
It's probably some 25-year-old who got drunk on 2 martinis at lunch and decided to go heavy-handed on some options with his buying power. So it's probably a good. Nothing against 25-year-olds. I'm 29. I'm not saying that, but the younger traders, especially these investment banker guys, these hedge fund guys, they got an ego. They got their 2 martinis at lunch. They're like, oh, buy. And then it's like, oh, wake up the next morning. That wasn't such a good idea.
And I think that brings into like a really good closing point for Cheddar Flow and any of these option scanner portfolio or tools. You all, if you choose to use Cheddar Flow or any other service, keep in mind that every single one of these orders is some idiot flesh pod, just like you, just some dude who may or may not know what they are doing. Now, that doesn't mean that you're any wiser or any dumber than they are, but these people have their own motivations. They have their own views on the market. They may be omega bears that have been losing money for years. They may be someone who is wasted out of their mind and just bid 500 grand on an illiquid option that they're not going to get their money out of. You ultimately, as a trader and a risk manager, need to use your filters, use your tools, and make smart trades.
Nothing like going in deep on way out of the money calls at Lollapalooza when you're six beers deep. So
Absolutely.
all right. Well, we are getting pretty close to ending. Dime, thank you so much for being a guest. Remember, guys, this was really this live stream. I just said almost live Dime. I don't know what I'm talking about. This live stream is really to highlight how you can use technical analysis and order flow together. Dime is really one of the perfect people to do this because he uses TrendSpider, he uses Cheddar flow together. And so, you did a great job showing these different case studies, showing a little bit how Cheddar flow works. And we do have the bundle package going on. So we do have the ability to get TrendSpider and Cheddar flow together. If you want more information about that, we've posted it quite a few times in the chat. So we've posted it. If you just scroll up, you'll be able to see it. So if you guys have any questions, you can always reach out to our customer success team, hello@trendspider.com. If you're a customer of TrendSpider and you just want to get Cheddar flow, or you're a customer of Cheddar flow and just want to get TrendSpider, we do have a deal on that too. So definitely reach out to the customer success team to check that out. And Dime, any last words? Thank you so much for spending your time in this old Seattle heat wave with us today. And
Oh yeah, no problem.
Everything.
All I'll say is like this takes time to learn, and if you do sign up, I'm always happy to help out on Twitter. I've kind of been a Cheddar flow ambassador for a while. Happy to help you guys if you have any questions. And there is a nice education center, and I do highly recommend checking out Cheddar Flow's YouTube page for more information as well.
I love it. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much for spending your evening with us, maybe even night if you're on the East Coast. Dime and I are more on the West Coast side of things. I'm in Denver. So it's still a little early for us, but definitely thank you everybody for joining in. Dime, thank you. You're the man. Thank you for really showing us how all this stuff works. Remember, check out the bundle package, and don't worry if you have one or the other, we'll hook you up with Cheddar flow or TrendSpider, whichever one you don't have yet. So that is it. Thank you everybody for your time. Everybody have a great Friday, and we'll see you on the next live stream.